Hi, integrating the arts. Kiddos, today we are going to be talking about designing environments that support creativity and the arts. This is a fun one. You need to be on campus or at least have the tools to get through this lecture, because you are going to be filling out a graphic organizer that you can pick up on the cubby on the outside of my door for my office. You will also be creating something that you'll need the workroom, the materials in that workroom. You're going to be shooting a video. You're going to be uploading that to YouTube. You're going to be busy. You're also going to be creating a floor plan for a potential classroom. And so all those supplies can be found on campus, so you need to be close. Plan on spending the whole class time doing this. This will probably take the whole block class to get this finished. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first is I would like for you to make sure that you have the classroom environment graphic organizer that can be found in the cubby outside of my office, and you will also need one sheet off of the 4 squares per inch graph pad. It is 11 by 17 piece of paper, but you are going to need that to take away with you wherever you tuck away in the building to complete all these activities. So those are the 2 things that you need to get going. So, when we are talking about classroom environment, we need to think about 3 things. We think about the climate, the space, and the time. Because typically how your classroom is set up when you first enter it before the students get there, it's not going to stay that way. And realistically, your classroom is not going to stay the exact same way all year long. You're probably going to move it around a couple times, especially in that first year or 2 when you're trying to figure out exactly who you are and how you run your classroom. Besides that, the bones of your classroom will probably stay the same, and then you will move around seats and their desks to best meet your instructional needs. So there are ways that we can nurture creativity, and we're going to talk about those a little bit. So when we talk about classroom climate, this is both the emotional and the academic feeling one gets from being in the environment. Emotionally, is it a safe place? Is it one that they can take risks and chances and it be okay? Academically, can they make mistakes? Can they question? Can they learn? But both of those things go into the climate. High expectations. Are there high expectations on the cleanliness of the room, the organization, how they treat it? They are going to get this directly from you because your classroom environment mirrors your expectations. Is it important that they are organized or is it not? But they're going to get that as soon as they walk into the classroom. Have you put time and love and energy into the space to show them that they should as well? You want to create an aesthetically pleasing classroom where children are safe to learn and willing to take risks. The materials are interesting and orderly, and I want you to think about it as like designing a home. Some of the kids that you teach are not going to have a orderly, comfortable, aesthetically pleasing home environment. And so this can be the place, this can be their retreat where they can feel comfortable and it can be a soothing space. Also, if you think about it, the kids spend more time with you than they even do in their own classrooms or in their own homes. And so it's important that this climate, this environment is everything that it should be. For the space, it needs to be organized. You need to know where everything is. You should be able to leave the classroom and tell a sub coming in exactly how everything should look, and it not being able to say scissors are exactly here. You can always find the worksheets here. You can always find crayons or textbooks, or you need to know exactly where everything is. And it's also a really good idea if your kids know where everything is. The student should be able to run the classroom without you being there. Flexible use of materials is important because we want to make sure that everything that you bring in the classroom, if it can have two purposes, that is the best. You need to have defined spaces for quiet and noisy activities. You need to have some private spaces, and I say that with some asterisks because kids need to be able to feel that they can retreat from just the big open room with 25 plus people in it, but it shouldn't be so private that you can't monitor their activity. This is especially true when it comes to thinking about spaces like computer centers. You should be able to see the screens if they're on them to exactly what they're doing. And of course, you need to accommodate for children with special needs when you are creating small spaces. Can they easily navigate it? In these spaces, think about also, can you clean it well? One of my first years of teaching, I found tons of gorgeous throw pillows that I was going to use in my reading nook. And then I figured out, you know what, I can't wash these. If I were to have lice or some type of outbreak, these things are covered in germs. So just think about all of those things. And the last one is time. The time needs to clearly convey what is important. How do you and your students spend your time throughout the day? Do you spend it on transitions? Do you give a huge amount of time for projects or exploration? Think about the children's attention spans. All of these things are important when you're thinking about the time because climate, space, and time all goes into that classroom environment. Really important about thinking with time is how are you going to move them? How are you going to transition them? Are you spending a lot of time finding your resources each day? Are they spending a lot of time in downtime waiting for you to get your stuff together? So just things to be kind of thinking about. You'll see that there are, you have stars here two next to climate, one next to space, and one next to time. I would like for you to pause this slide and then go into Canvas and watch the two videos over climate. And then answer the one question. So there'll be a video over classroom climate. And then there will be a discussion question. I just want you to answer it, and then at some point before next week, go back and comment on someone. There are 4 videos that you're supposed to watch here, 2 on climate, 1 on space, 1 on time, and they're each worth 2 points. 1 for your initial comment and 1 for commenting back to a peer. So go ahead and pause this and watch those 4 short videos. Make your answer the questions and then come back to me. I hope those videos were kind of sparked some interest and some thoughts for you guys for your future classrooms, and that we will have a good discussion coming from there. We are next going to talk about room arrangement. When we are talking about this room arrangement, I want you to really be thinking, because here in a couple of minutes you are actually going to use that 11 by 17 graph pad, and you are going to create for me and sketch out for me right now, what are your thoughts on your classroom? How would you make your classrooms look? So just some things before you do that activity to remember. Again, I said it in previous slides, your students will mirror your classroom. What I mean by that is if your classroom is neat and clean and orderly, they will have a more mild personality in your classroom. If your classroom is disorderly and kind of wild, that's going to spark that in them also. So it's really important that how you want your students to behave and how you want them to act and feel in the classroom is going to be a direct reflection of the culture and the personality that you give your classroom. So some things to think about specifically for the environment. The environment communicates a message about appropriate behavior. So is it okay for them to get up and sharpen their pencils? If the answer is no, then how do they solve that problem? Are their pencils ready for them that's close? Do you want them getting up and walking around for a tissue or to throw something away or to get highlighters? Or all of those things is communicated by exactly how you set up your room. And so when you set up your room, you need to think about, what do children naturally do or want or need, and does the space meet all of those needs? Going to the bathroom, sharpening their pencil, going to a library station, getting supplies, getting worksheets, turning in papers, throwing away trash, all of those things. There's no right answer, but how you want your students to behave is directly reflected in how you set up this classroom environment. For the space, it must be easy to supervise. I talked about this in a previous slide, but you should be able to, from where you feel like you're going to spend most of your time. Let's say you have a kidney-shaped table and you plan on running some type of centers out of that area. If you can look from that area and see every point of the room, that's a well-designed classroom. But a lot of times we think, oh, we want these cozy reading nooks that give them privacy and an opportunity to read and relax and let their guard down. What you've really just done is given them a space to maybe misbehave, get into some serious trouble, and you're just inviting some poor choices from your students. So think about that when you're designing a space. The materials must be accessible and easy to use. You don't want to be the point person for everything. You need a pencil, I'll get it. You need highlighters, markers, I'll get it. Glue sticks, scissors, loose leaf paper, I'll get it. That's not what you want to do. You want to have all those things down for the students to be able to get, and you need to set up expectations on when are they allowed to get those things, who's allowed to get them, how much of the supplies are they allowed to use, what do they do when they're finished, all of those things. Some things to think about, if you do have cleaning materials or things that could be harmful or dangerous or poisonous, those need to be up and out of reach of these children, and preferably behind some type of locked cabinet. You need to think about the traffic flow. Be alert to traffic patterns, specifically lining up. Where are the kids going to line up at the door to go to lunch or art or music or PE or recess? How do they come in? How do they come out? How do they line up? Those are things to think about. And then also stations or centers. Are you going to have those in your classroom? And if so, where are they going to meet? And what are they going to look like? And what do they need? Do they need tables or windows or bookcases or an aquarium? Or just to think about those things as we're thinking about our classroom floor plan. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a classroom floor plan for either a preschool/kindergarten classroom. You could do a toddler's classroom if you would like, but I would prefer if we stick with pre-K through grade 4. And then there's also grades 1 through 4. There are examples here, and so we're going to look at those really quickly. So here is an example of a toddler classroom. Okay, you can see, no. This is an example of the preschool and kindergarten classroom. So you can see that there is an area in the middle for movement, that there is, of course, a bathroom in there, which makes it really easy. Dramatic play in the corner. You have cubbies for them to put their things. You do have that reading room, and I actually do not like that reading room at all because you can see the bookcases that are blocking. So the kiddos can't, so you cannot see them unless someone is actually rotating around the room, which you should be, but that's not always going to happen. You have some art easels, a science station, a sink. The one thing that you can really see that's not there is there are no desks for students. But again, if this is a preschool and kindergarten classroom, that might be something that they not need. Let's look at this one. Now, this one right here is the sample for the toddler. And you have a sink, a stove, and a kitchen in that dramatic play center. You have windows and plants, which I love. You have lamps, which I think is a really important part of a classroom. In my classroom, I never used the overhead lamps or lights. I had lamps, and the windows were always, the blinds were pulled all the way up to get in that natural light. There's plenty of storage. There's another bathroom. There's a sink on the outside of the bathroom so you can see them washing their hands. And then you have open areas and bookshelves, dress-up clothes, a mirror. Again, that's a toddler room. I think this one is what we're going to mostly be interested in here. This is the sample for a classroom, grades 1 through 4. You see the door, and then they have kind of stations, right? There's a teacher desk when you first walk in. Then you have manipulative, social studies stuff, storage. You have that kidney-shaped table for small group activities. And then you have books and reading materials, games, plants and discovery. So art, puppets, investigations. So they've set up areas and bookcases for those stations. And then there are some theme displays and a chalkboard, a computer, which I think dates this a lot, but there's files, a display area, library books, a carpet, corkboard, calendar to invite them over. Then you can see kids' desks. I would, if I were designing my room, I don't think this is the textbook perfect classroom, so I would even change some stuff, but that's because it reflects my teaching style. And so what I want you to do is sketch with a pencil, what exactly would your classroom look like, your perfect classroom, okay? Make sure you include door, windows, stations, desks. Are you going to have rugs? Are you going to have lamps? All of those things. Are you going to have a bathroom, teacher's desk? Are you not going to have a teacher's desk? The real big part then comes in is I want you to take your phone and video yourself explaining it, okay? I put this here and I put that here and here's this and this is why I chose this. And then I want you to upload that video to YouTube, and then you're going to submit this assignment, but you're just going to submit a URL, and it's because it's your YouTube URL. And I want you to explain why you chose each thing in your classroom. Please make sure that you've labeled it. That will help me when you're explaining things. But you're going to explain, you're going to draw it, label it, and explain it, and then upload it to YouTube and submit that for me. Pause this and then come back to me. Okay, so when we are, I hope you guys had fun doing your classroom floor plans. I think that they're fun to do. And it kind of gets me dreamy about being a classroom teacher. It's kind of the fun part, in my opinion. But just something for you to think about. Okay, so arts-based centers, some things for you guys to consider. You need to create centers that are appropriate for a particular group of children, right? And so my stations or my centers are going to be a little bit different each time that I teach them in each year because of the specific needs of each class. And you also, let's say if I have a science station or a science center, I'm going to use those two words interchangeably, I am going to offer my higher reading ability kids a different form of that station or center than I would my lower reading ability kids. Because if I just put in one thing for all 25 kids, then you're going to miss my highs and my lows, or you're going to miss most likely 2/3 of your kids. So you need to think about your stations and your centers to be appropriate for a particular group of children, right? And it needs to be able to hit that diverse group of kids that you will always have. You're going to always introduce the center with guidelines for its use. So you're never just going to say, okay, we're having stations today and let them go. You are going to explain each station, each center, how they use it correctly, what their purpose is for that day, what their job is, and what's acceptable behavior while they're in there. Because some stations and centers, you want them to talk. And some stations and centers, you don't want them to talk. And so you need to communicate that to them. You're going to be using a planning board for a procedure chart and or a learning contract. So a planning board is something you're actually a product you're going to make here in a couple minutes. But it is a way to organize. If I have 25 kids, and when you make your chart, I just want you to label things 1 through 25, okay? If I'm child number 1, what stations am I going to go to, and how do I know what order? How do I know where I'm going? Because you'll see that that's kind of part of the biggest problem is kids don't know, okay, where do I go now? Where am I supposed to be? You don't want to be answering those questions. You just want a timer to go off or you ring a bell and they transition smoothly to the next station. So that's a planning board. A procedure chart is kind of the same thing. A procedure chart can also be at each station so they know, okay, she explained it, but I forget. What do I do first? What do I do second? What am I supposed to be working on? At the end, what does she expect to see at the end of this station time? And then learning contracts. Sometimes you might need to have a learning contract with a kiddo saying, okay, I'm going to get this done during this time because it is more unstructured time. Some kids, it takes a while for them to learn how to learn under a little bit more freeing environment. Assume specific roles to facilitate learning. So you should not, during centers or stations, you should not be answering tons of questions and you should not be dealing with behaviors. All of that should already be set up when you have introduced the stations and centers and when you've set up your classroom culture and their behavior. Your job then is to have the opportunity to work with a small group of students. You can pool them and you can work on whatever you want them to do, or you can assess them, but that is your role during these type of centers. And then document children's progress and evaluate center use. And we talk about this a little bit in preschool practicum if you take that course with us. But if a center or a station is not being used the way it should, or they're confused, or the products that they are making in it or creating or doing is not meeting the needs, then it's our job to change it as teachers. It's not their fault over and over and over, week after week. If you're having an issue with something, then we as educators need to react in a way saying, okay, we are going to change this and make it more appropriate for them. Okay, so like I was saying, what I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to go to Google or Teacher Pay Teachers or Pinterest, and I want you to create a product that can be made for building a fluid center time in your classroom. So I want you to think you just made your floor plan. I want you to now think, okay, I'm going to have maybe an art station, maybe a listening station, or a phonics, or a social studies or writing station. Figure out how many stations that you think that you would have, and then have your 1 through 25 kids, that will be their names, and you're going to use the resource room here at CCU. You can use the laminar, you can use whatever you need to do, and you are going to create that product. Okay, you are going to get your ideas off of Google, Teacher Pay Teachers, or Pinterest, and create some product that helps students identify, okay, we have an hour of stations. Each station is 20 minutes. I'm going to go to 3 stations. What do I go to first, second, or third? Okay, just to organize that. You are going to create it, and then I would actually like for you to bring it to next class period, and you are going to present it to us. But I want you to spend some time right now looking up those things and creating that product so it is good to go for next Monday, when I promise I will see you. Okay. Now for transitions and routines. This is part of my classroom management little pedestal that I get on sometimes, but you can be an excellent teacher and you can have a really good classroom environment, but if you spend the whole day in transition because they are slow to do such things like moving around the room, switching from one subject to another, you are wasting a huge chunk of time. We might think the school day seems long, 6+ hours, but if you spend 10 minutes transitioning from one thing to another and you're doing, 5 or 6 different things, you've just wasted an hour of your time. So your transitions need to be really quick and clean and known to the students and the teachers. So transitions are times during the day when children move from one activity to the next. You're going to watch a video it's linked on Canvas that's going to show you a really good idea for using transitions and routines. And again, those routines are regular and predictable activities that you do all the time. You always go to the bathroom. They always come in the morning. They always leave in the afternoon. They always line up for lunch. But you should be able to have the classroom run itself without you being the one that says every step of the way. They should be able to do it themselves. You need to establish, just something to think about, you need to establish a signal for listening, a cue for students about how much time is left for an activity, maybe how to incorporate the arts for transitions is something that you can think about. And then also, how are you going to communicate with them indoors and outdoors? Because you can't, if you hear my voice, clap twice outside, because they're not going to hear your voice at recess. So you need to think about those two things. So go onto Canvas, watch that video, and then make your initial comment, and then come back and comment on someone else's to receive your full points there. That is it for today. I know we've done a lot. You have created things, you've drawn things, you've watched videos, you made comments. For your homework that is due next class period, I believe it is Chapter 7, but it is the Designing Environments that Support Creativity in the Arts. Read that chapter and do a reflection, which we have been doing those infographics and they've been working well. Also, make sure that you have uploaded your floor plan and your video onto Canvas, and make sure that you bring your completed transition center product that you have created this class period to class next time. If you guys have any questions, you know how to reach me, and I can't wait to see you guys next week.